excited to end. We are excited to end the series with a great speaker. Jamie Rincker is a registered dietitian, owner of Fork Nutrition Counseling, and head of nutrition at Bevo. She served as a research dietitian at the Bale Star Nutrition Lab in the Center for Aging at Duke University for 6 years, focusing on the impact of nutrition and exercise on physical function and quality of life in older adults. And today, she spoke at, I think, one of our first Aging and Thriving programs, and we're excited to have her back again, speaking about protein's role in a diet for strength and longevity. And so welcome, Jamie.
Thanks, Jenny. I'm so happy to come back and do this conference again. A little bit of a different talk. We focused a lot on brain health the last time and the Mediterranean diet. And this time we're going to definitely recap some of the important points of that because I think they're essential to health and longevity. But I know you got like a little teaser of that with the brain talk yesterday. And we're going to focus a lot on protein, as the title suggests, but how does that actually spell out longevity for you? How do you think about protein? How should you be thinking about the changing needs that you have as your body ages, that sort of thing. But before I go off on a tangent, I'm going to pull up my my presentation so I don't get off track because I'm a talker. And some of you may know me, some of you, if you don't, I grew up in Michigan, so you might hear a little accent there. I came to the Durham area about 10 years ago now, and have been making our home here with my wife and my little dog, and now our 3.5-year-old kid Shy. So we just love it here, and I love working with people. So all that to say is that I run a private practice. If you feel after hearing this talk that you would like some individual conversations about your health, I am available. I'm not trying to sell anything. I just want you to know that I'm a provider that has an ear that is especially attuned to thinking about aging and dignity with aging. And so I just want you to know that I'm a resource, and that could be for nutrition, or if you were looking for providers for something else in the area, I might be able to help you out. So, so reach out if you need to. Just really want to stress that. Let me pull this up and share with you. All right. All right. Protein's role in a diet for strength and longevity. So we're going to do a little hello and housekeeping talk. We're going to talk about how our bodies change over time, how they typically change. There's a lot of caveats to that, but we'll talk about typical changes. We'll talk about how protein needs change over time, what I recommend, why I recommend it, what science is behind that, and how you can actually play that out in your life. I want you to remind everybody that I'm not giving medical advice. I know this is like the disclaimer talk, but at the same time, like, you have your own set of providers and you have your own very specific individual health needs. So I don't want to throw anybody off. So, these are my recommendations. They are not a prescription for anyone, but there's something that you could either talk to your providers about or talk to me about and see if they make sense for you. I love when people interrupt me. I love questions. Please just jump in. You can answer questions that I'm going to have for you either in the chat, and Jenny's going to read them out to me, or you can just unmute yourself and talk. We will mute you if you're unmuted and we just hear, background and maybe a phone call or something like that. So don't feel bad about that if it happens. Just pretend we're all hanging out in my living room or at the J Cafe, because that's why I've got my coffee ready, the delicious J Cafe coffee. All right, so yeah, so definitely interrupt me. And then as we talk about protein, we have to also talk about the rest of the plate. So I want to talk about that. And I want to answer the questions that y'all submitted beforehand. So we'll get into that too. And some of those will be answered during. All right. So here I am. I'm a dietitian. On the top picture here, I'm eating lots of different foods. And I also happen to be in Israel in this picture. So I really, really love it. And it was a great experience to eat lots and lots of different foods. But I mainly use this because I want people to know that I think that it's important to try to enjoy as many foods as you can, and try not to over restrict or over limit yourself. You'll see that will be a running theme in the way I talk about food. My main areas of interest for nutrition, they change over time, but I'm fanatical about nutrition for folks over 50. I really think that it's important and sort of can be low hanging fruit of things that we can do to kind of like right the ship if we're concerned about our health. But there's a lot of wild messages about nutrition, and you might feel like you're getting whiplash with all the different recommendations. And so I think that it's and everybody wants to sell you something, right? So it's really important to learn what you can, to be a self-advocate, figure out what kind of works for you, and find people that you trust that can be resources that can kind of, vet things for you. Okay. I love talking about perimenopause and menopause because it's wild and it's an experience that does not get enough attention, and our bodies change over time. I will also say for men, your hormones change too as you age, and that impacts the way that your body works. And I think it's important. It's something that we don't talk enough about. Running theme of things we don't talk about. I love working with people on IBS because anytime that your GI system is not working with you and getting in the way of your day-to-day life, that's terrible. And I have some training in that. So I really love working with people on that and other sensitive GI disorders. And I also really love working with people that are neurodiverse anywhere in the spectrum, because it can be challenging to figure out how do you get your nutritional needs met in a world that's not necessarily set up for you. And so those are the things that I really like to do. And I approach all of that with what we call a weight inclusive or a weight neutral approach, which means if you come into my office, I'm not going to ask you your weight, and I'm not going to go straight to, we need to lose weight to see if it impacts all these things that you're worried about. I want to talk to you and learn about you as a person and figure out, I approach things with not looking at weight first. So there's a lot of other things to talk about. And that's a whole nother talk. If people want to talk to me about that, I love chatting about it. I am affiliated with Vivo, which is an online small group strength training program for older adults. I'm their nutritionist there. I run my own practice called Fork Nutrition Counseling, and I'm also connected to the Center for Aging. So Jenny covered all that stuff. And here's my beautiful child. He's a little bit younger here, but we're eating matzah. So I was like, let's include that. Okay. And we're in Dew Gardens. So my first question for everybody is, how do you eat for longevity? So that's either you personally, or how do you think maybe one should eat for longevity? To unmute yourselves or go in the chat and just cacophony, send it at me. I know I'm going to make y'all talk and interact with me. I see something in the chat there. What do we got, Jenny? It might be straight to me there. All right, so we've got, for poor sleepers, foods are particularly helpful to eat before bedtime that might facilitate sleep other than milk. Yeah, okay, we can talk about that.
Jamie, you want me just to read out some of the things that people are saying?
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Okay, I've read the Whole Body Reset, which recommends whey protein for building muscle, which we tend to lose as we age. I try not to eat any unprocessed food, Mediterranean diet and low calorie, try not to overeat, cut down on sugar, moderation.
Awesome. Yes, you guys are on the right track. And we're going to talk about whey protein today, actually. I have not read the Whole Body Reset. I don't know what it is. So I'm not gonna give it my stamp of approval, but it could be interesting. Time restricted eating. Ooh, that's a hot button topic. So yeah, that's interesting. I'm not going to talk a lot about fasting and intermittent fasting. And because I think we're still working on the science, and I think it was not ready for like the mainstream. And so it can increase eating disorders. That doesn't mean that there aren't reasons to figure out what time restrictive stuff might be beneficial to bodies. But I think that we have to like kind of walk delicately in that area, because If you start over restricting, I've definitely seen people go in the wrong direction, and nobody wakes up and is like, I want an eating disorder. I just want to remind everybody, like, so we have to be really careful about the things that we do adopt, but the science behind it is extremely interesting. And I think that it could be helpful for some people, but it's definitely it's not a good like public health recommendation at this point, but we can definitely talk about it. Oh, the whole body reset is AARP. Oh, right on. Okay, so that's probably pretty decent. I'd love to look at it. So I agree. Those are all really great starting points. Less processed sugar, less processed foods overall. Okay, next question I've got for you is, how has your body changed over time, or how do you expect it to, or were there any surprises? I'm, I don't want anybody to divulge anything that they don't want to, but been anything that was kind of like surprising or irritating, or how ways that you've worked around it? Just throw anything out. Yep, harder to lose weight.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, you talk, Jenny.
Oh, no, more skin. My skin is more fragile, early osteoporosis. All of the above. Worst knees, can't run. Worst is knees, so I can't run.
Yeah, that's really frustrating. All right.
I think there was one in the chat that I was also going to write, which is weight gain over time, that and harder to lose it, and having never had a weight gain issue, and then now as I'm older I do, and it's hard to understand how to stop that and turn it around.
Prednisone, yeah. Different medications can add weight on. I see somebody just notice something about prednisone. That's definitely steroids can increase. They can increase inflammation, or like not inflammation, but you can hold on to water weight a lot more. There's lots of meds will do stuff like that. Reduced appetite, that's super important. Okay. These are all good. Thanks for chatting with me there in the chat box. So I'm going to stop for 1 second and pull up when my slides disappeared. So I'm going to pull it back up. Y'all are very patient, so appreciate it. I'm gonna hide that slide. Sorry about that. All right, this is important. So typical changes with aging, and this is not all of them, but it's going to relate to a lot of things that I'm going to talk about today. Typically, our physical activity is reduced. That's a typical thing. Doesn't mean that's what's happening to you. That's one of the reasons that that we lose muscle mass. So that's my red flag one. We're going to talk a lot about that today. And then also we see that shift in body composition that probably some of you are experiencing, that noted the changes in weight, and that your fat mass increases and your lean body mass might decrease at the same time. And so that body composition is changing in ways that you're not used to. It feels weird, maybe like not in control of your body, and that does not feel good. Sensory functions can change, and that can be related to balance and eyesight and hearing. And so those things can make it sort of more difficult to move about the world. GI tract changes. So some people are not going to be absorbing or breaking down food as easily as they did. You may find certain foods are starting to bother you and never ever did before. That's not uncommon either. And there's often things that we can do about the GI tract changes. But one of them is to just kind of understand that our bodies change, our needs change. We are less able to continue to hold on to fluids that we need to. So it becomes even more important, if you're not somebody that usually does get enough fluids in, to increase your fluids and try to start that early in the day, because we all know you don't want to have to go visit the bathroom a whole bunch at night. And it's kind of, there's all these push and pulls, right? But But it's way easier to get dehydrated. So I think that's an important thing to bring up. Our hormones are fluctuating and changing. Liver functions aren't as great, and anabolic resistance, which is the fancy way of saying it's harder to build muscle. So we're losing muscle, and I want to talk about that in particular. So we call that sarcopenia, and it is the muscle loss that is commonly related to aging. There are other reasons that sarcopenia can happen, but it means losing muscle mass and losing muscle strength, which you think are the same thing, but they're not. So losing muscle mass, that's pretty clear. It's just losing some of the muscle fiber, the muscle tissue that you have. We just become a little less able to keep it on. And I will tell you that it's complicated and we don't know exactly why, but we know genetics plays a part of it. We know that less activity plays a part into it. We know that the hormonal changes play into this, but genetics wise, some people really do just start to lose their muscle faster than others. So it is important to kind of note if you are starting to feel like you're needing to help yourself up a lot more out of chairs. You can kind of, I'll go through the decades and kind of just talk a little bit about the changes. So in our 20s, 30s, we're kind of like peaking at our natural accretion of getting more muscle on the body. And then it starts to kind of go down about 8 to 10% each decade. And that is the very imperceptible loss of strength. And we don't really notice, but then one day you might realize that you're like, kind of like when you're going downstairs, you're using the railing more and that sort of thing. It's just these little tiny ways that you're noticing it. And then it really starts to speed up in the later decades. So if you didn't notice it before and you're noticing it now, this is all very natural. But there are things that we can do about it. And so even though we don't know all of the reasons why it happens, luckily we do know some things that we can do to kind of slow it down and to change that trajectory. This is zooming in at those weird little leg blobs that you saw on the right. You may not know that those were legs. You might have thought they looked kind of like steak, which I know is not a nice thing to say, but this is an image of somebody's leg. And it's the inside. And the reason I actually want to bring up the steak is that we are very similar in the way that some of our legs are very marbled and some of our legs are very lean. This is the same person. And on the left, they have the darker kind of gray area. That's all the very lean mass, and that's your muscle. And then there's body fat that the other one is pointing to, but not really, it's not a great arrow. So all around the edges, we've got the subcutaneous fat, and that's the fat that's, we want that there. That's very good to have. We all need fat on our bodies. And on the right, this is a little bit later in time, these are maybe 2 decades later, you start to see that fat mass increase, the muscle mass decrease, and the fat mass start to infiltrate the muscle. And this is where that strength piece comes in, where it's not just about losing those muscle fibers, but the fibers that are still there aren't as strong because they've got these fat particles that are kind of in the way of them firing correctly. Okay, so that's sort of like, there's your visual in of what's happening. Why aren't my legs? Why is it so hard to stand up? And that's part of what's happening here. That's okay. You guys, again, we all have fat tissue on our bodies. We're all supposed to have fat tissue on our bodies. This is another kind of zoom in and looking at the first chart that we looked at, but I really like to point this out because it shows you how it actually impacts your day-to-day life. So things are good. We've gotten strong in earlier life and really slowly start to lose it here. And then the one at the top here, somebody that's doing a lot of resistance training, they're still going to be losing some, but it's going to be a lot slower. But if, let's say, something traumatic happens, it could be illness, it could be loss, it could be lots of different things. It could be loss of resources where you're not able to get the foods that you need. And then we see the sharper decline here, and how quickly that you can get into this kind of pink zone of we're getting towards disability here. Okay, and so when it starts to get in the way of your independence, and we're worried, right? And so luckily, again, there are things that we can do about this. And I want to bring it up a notch here. And I know this might feel like a cheesy picture, but for me, this is how I want to picture as much as I can the way that I want to age, and thinking about what are the mountains that I want to climb, either real or imaginary, but what are the things that you want to be doing? You don't have to put this in the chat, but if anybody's feeling moved to share something, please do. So we want to be strong. We want to be as independent as possible. And we want to just take care of our bodies as much as we can. And that's also working with our bodies in whatever kind of ability or disability that we have going on. What are the things that we can do to support our bodies and keep them as strong as possible? And my recipe for today for success with that is combining resistance training with nutrition, and specifically with protein. So the basis of me talking about this is because of the time that I spent at Duke working on research studies that were specifically looking at using a little bit higher protein intake that was monitored for people that were over 60 that had different types of illnesses. It could have been diabetes, cardiovascular issues, even it just like being able to move around. And so we have lots of different people coming in that I worked with, and I worked with them over a time of 6 months to 2 years sort of thing. And we would work on increasing their movement and their protein to a certain degree, and not high protein diet. So I want to be clear about that. I'm going to say that a few times. What we're doing is we're just going to figure out where sort of that sweet spot for people of getting enough protein and enough resistance exercise to stimulate muscles, to grow new muscles, and to hold on to the muscle mass that you have. So this is a nice example of a meta-analysis that was done that looked at all the different studies that were decent, that were looking at either using just resistance or just protein as just, eating an adequate amount of protein versus doing this kind of eating the protein and doing resistance training at the same time. Now, I want to point out, let's say you can't do a lot of resistance training right now for whatever reason. You do get a bump in strength here when you add in more protein. Okay. And don't worry too much about how much this is, because it's the amount that I'm going to be suggesting that you try out. But what I really want you to focus on is the fact that it's more when you're adding in any kind of resistance movement, and that's strength training, that's, just using, I'm not going to get too into the resistance training. We can talk about that in a minute. I just want you to focus on the fact that this is a really big jump. This is a significant jump in being able to be stronger if you combine the two. So we can't do it all with diet, and we can't do it all with nutrition, but if you combine these two things, then it's very powerful. Their conclusion, resistance training is essential for protein supplementation to really improve muscle strength. What's that talking about? So resistance training plus protein, 20 to 40 grams of protein per meal, 2 to 4 times a day, depending on things like the size of your body, and being able to digest things. And then the last thing is that we're going to talk about even protein distribution throughout the day. Okay. So this picture is how we typically eat protein. The majority of people eat a little bit of protein at breakfast, and they eat a little bit more at lunch, and then they eat the most of their protein at dinner. This is equal to 90 grams of protein. So that's kind of common. That's sort of our culture. And I want to encourage you to consider and try out spreading that out. So about the same amount of protein throughout the day, but spreading it out to 30 grams 3 times a day, sort of the average. And the reason for that is because there are a good number of studies, and continue to be more studies, that are showing that around 30 grams of protein at one time can help to stimulate the muscle to grow, for our bodies to build muscle. Why is that happening? Mainly because protein is this giant complex molecule that gets into our bodies, and there's a few different steps that have to happen for us to break down and unfold and absorb the protein and then use it really well. We just get less efficient at that as we get older. It could be because we've lost appetite. It could be because there's less stomach acid in our stomachs. A lot of people get less stomach acid. So what we're doing here is kind of like It's the idea of sort of flooding that system a little bit so that all of those, the sensors and all of the enzymes and everything working on breaking down protein is able to do it. So our protein needs right now, the current recommendation is 0.8 kilograms per, or 0.8 grams per kilogram of body mass. And this version where you're looking at here is 1.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. And that's just kind of a lot of like number mumbo jumbo. Let's see what that actually looks like in real life. So that is 4 ounces of cooked beef. This section right over here, I'm going to send you guys this handout. But this section here is going to give you 30 grams of protein at one time. It's not the only way you can do that. So 4 ounces of cooked any animal protein is the easiest way to do it. I'm not saying it's the best. I'm not saying it's the worst. It's the easiest way. It's very absorbable for our bodies. And as well as dairy, if you can do dairy, 1.5 cups of Greek yogurt, a cup of cottage cheese, or 1 to 2 scoops of protein powder. So really fun fact is that as we're learning more about different protein powders, we're finding that if you cannot eat dairy protein, if you can't have whey protein, the process that the vegan proteins go through make it a little bit more absorbable. So the vegan protein powders are actually a really great option if that's something that is a concern for you. We didn't used to know that. It's new and exciting for me. So, and we need to just keep getting more well-done research in this area so that we continue to figure out ways that we can help people get the protein that they need. Okay, and of course you can mix and match. So like 1 egg is going to have around 7 grams of protein. A quarter block of tofu is going to have that. I think it's 2/3 of a cup of tofu though, will give you close to that 30 grams. I don't have tempeh on here and I don't have seitan, but those are also really great vegan options for protein. A 3/4 cup of either dairy milk, soy milk, or pea milk are the milks that are going to give you 8 grams of protein for 1 cup. So they're all very similar in their protein content. And then you can do, nuts and seeds, beans and lentils and things like that. And then the bottom section here is just pointing out that a lot of our other foods do have some protein in them, and that all counts. Every time you're eating a serving of vegetables, you're getting 2 to 3 grams of protein. Starch vegetables also have some, and grains are usually a little bit higher than that. Whole grains are going to be a little bit higher. So it becomes less hard than you might think. Do we need to interrupt me and answer these chat?
I was going to ask the questions that someone just asked, why Greek yogurt?
Good question. Just because it's strained, it's like gram per gram, it has less fluid in it, so there's more protein that's in there. And so it's like less volume that you would have to eat. If you were to eat the runny yogurt, you'd have to basically eat like 2 times that much to be able to get the 30 grams of protein. So if you prefer the runny yogurt, I have people do 2 different things. Either get the runny yogurt and have half of this amount, like do the 1.5 cups of the runny yogurt and then add in like some chia seeds and nuts and that kind of thing, and like, get yourself to that 30 grams of protein that way. Or some people will add a little bit of milk back to the Greek yogurt. I'm not really sure why, but I have a number of clients that do that, and they just want to be in control of the amount of liquid they're adding back into that. Okay, what else we got? I can see
Someone wrote, would this plan also help to lose weight?
Maybe, and maybe not. It kind of depends how you do the rest of the plate. And again, what I find is that it's the healthiest way of going about kind of managing our bodies is to do the things that you would do to get a healthy body and see kind of where your body ends up with the weight. And that's it's not a great answer, but each person is very individual. And I think that it's just not acknowledged enough of how quickly one can become disordered in their eating. And it's really serious, and it can hurt your health so much, as well as say you don't ever end up having eating disorder, but if you lose weight for losing weight, you're like 90% of the time people gain that weight back. But I will say that eating protein in this way does keep people more satiated. I find that people have better energy. They're thinking more clearly. They may even sleep better. Like, no, this is not, you know, the silver bullet to life, but I do find that it really is helpful for people. So it can, and some people do lose weight. So it just kind of depends how you fill out the rest of your plate and how you're moving your body.
Then someone asked if you could provide any tips on getting calcium while getting the protein.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the dairy, if you can do that. So the dairy is an easy way of getting it. It's not uncommon for a provider to suggest to do a calcium supplement in addition. If you really, you know, if you have risk, I would talk to your doctor about if you should do a calcium supplement, when you should do it. I prefer recommending calcium citrate. It's best absorbed. It's just the most absorbable one. It can be a little more expensive, but it's the reason is that I don't know why it's more expensive, but the reason I want you to do it is not because it's expensive. I want you to do it because it works better. And so you do have to look at, you know, when you're buying a calcium supplement, which kind it is. Calcium citrate. Sorry.
I'm sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
Mhm. Go ahead, please.
I said, would food items need to be varied, or can I stick with a few I like?
Oh, you can totally stick with foods you like. Variety is important in some ways. Like, variety is important if you can get different colors of like fruits and vegetables throughout the week and that sort of thing, because then you're getting like different inputs of different antioxidants. You're also getting different fiber profiles, and that's really good. But let's say you just like could be one of two things. I don't know if this person is asking because you only like certain foods, and that's fine. If you found foods that are safe for you to eat and feel good, then you should stick with that stuff. And if you feel like you're too limited and you're probably not getting all the nutrients you need, I would definitely recommend working with a dietitian to figure out if you are getting all of your needs met. But overall, the protein content of like pork, fish, poultry, beef, those things are all very similar in their amino acid breakdown. Yeah, that's what I would say about that.
And then someone, is whey protein better than other powders?
Whey protein has tested very well in clinical studies. It's very absorbable. It has different proteins in it, and one of them is we call slow proteins and fast proteins. And so it's like it kind of seems to play better for recovery after really big bouts of exercise. And so, but I don't know if that's because it's just been studied more and that we've had whey protein for a lot longer. But it is, if you can do whey protein, then I do recommend it, because I know that it really does make a big impact, and we just have more evidence that it does.
And then the last question I see right now is, how about protein bars and pre-made drinks?
So those can be, so the protein bars are kind of a mix. So a lot of them have a lot of additives. You're reaching more into the very highly processed foods there. And yes, protein powder is a processed food. But I like to think of it more as it's a supplement that is similar. You know, it's better to eat food when you can, but if you can't, you need a supplement. That's a great supplement to do. The protein bars can be great and really handy for like travel when you're on the go, but just remember that they do have a lot of additives in them typically. So you try to find one that maybe doesn't have a lot of wacky additives in it. And I don't have a really great recommendation. I have recommendations on ones that have a good amount of protein in them, like the Premier Protein has bars, Quest has bars, and they're pretty tasty. So I think that, use them kind of sparingly, I would say, if you can, and stick to the pre-made drinks though, with Premier Protein. Orgain is the other one that you'll see everywhere. Those are both really easy, accessible drinks to get. Those I'm definitely all for. It's great because they're also shelf stable. A lot of times Costco or Sam's Club, they carry these things. And so, yeah, so those are good. They usually taste a lot better when they're cold too, just FYI.
And then someone asked what about nuts?
Nuts are amazing. They're perfect. You should have them. And then remember that they're very calorie dense. because they have a good amount of fats in them. These fats are typically really good for our brains and cardiovascular system, but like a serving of nuts is like, it's a few tablespoons. So it's not sitting down with a whole thing of peanuts or a whole thing of walnuts and eating them all. It's like having, like maybe 4 or 5 walnuts with a piece of fruit or on your salad or something like that. But they're fantastic. And if you're not including nuts and seeds in your diet, then I think that you should look into it. I think they're really important.
I
Okay,
think
are we
that's
all
all.
caught up?
Yep, we're all caught up.
Great. All right. Okay, so just zooming in again, remember this. This is what you're going to take home. 4 ounces of cooked protein. You know what that looks like? It's different for so many foods. So in general, you can kind of go with the like, okay, so the card trick, a deck of cards is about 3 ounces of meat, and it's about that thick too. It's really similar to this. But 4 ounces is what we want to get to the 30 grams, right? So I say just go up to that first knuckle if you have to eyeball it. Going up to your first knuckle there. Aren't these cards cute with little dogs? I don't know where they came from. But I also think that it's not a bad idea to kind of like put on your scientist hat and get a food scale, like a super cheap one off Amazon. I got this off Amazon 10 years ago and it still works and it's super cheap. Just so you can put it on there and say, okay, I see, like maybe you want to put your chicken before you cook it on there and then after you cook it and weigh both, no cross-contamination. But you want to see how much weight you're losing during the cooking process. And so, it's usually like 5 to 6 ounces pre-cooked, and then 4 ounces cooked is going to give you that high quality protein. Blah, 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 blah. We already looked at all those. Okay. Plant sources. So the lentils, tempeh, protein milk, even pasta has protein, you guys. Wheat has protein in it. I will say that there's a lot of interesting choices out there now. And one of them I happen to like is the chickpea protein pasta, because a lot of the gluten-free pastas are really terrible in their texture. Right. So, but I think that's pretty good. And it does have more protein in it and fiber. So that's a way to go if you want to. How to modify if you need to reduce sodium. So sodium, the way that I would modify is I would track how you're eating a little bit and look at, like, write down things you're eating, not calories or anything like that. But are you eating a lot of crackers, salty foods? Are you eating a lot of like pizza dough has a lot of salt in it? If you're eating more on the unprocessed side of things, and then you may not need to reduce sodium, but it's always worth doing sort of you could use something free like MyFitnessPal and put all the food you're eating in for like 3 days and then look at the sodium and it'll tell you where you're kind of landing. And so I think that's a good way to look at it, to avoid the more processed meats. So, and that is a super important caveat that this is bringing this to my mind, is that processed meats like lunch meat, charcuterie, the meats that are more connected to things like cancer. So they're, they're not healthy for us. We know that the nitrates, the preservatives in them are not good, and they seem to be associated with cancer. And so without diving into that and noting that that's also a socioeconomic thing, and we don't totally know what's going on with that research, it's clear that there's a lot of sodium in it. So trying to avoid having those a lot. Does that mean you shouldn't have a hot dog if you go to the ballpark and that's one of your favorite things to do? No, you should do that. But are there other places that you can reduce? Are there like less salty cheeses that you can buy? Things like that. Otherwise, you're not looking at a lot of sodium with this if you're cooking the protein at home, or let's say you need to buy protein that's already cooked. Always they sell plain rotisserie chickens. That's a way to reduce the sodium. That's really good. Any other ideas about sodium that people want to share, just throw it into the chat, because I definitely am not the authority on all the ideas. All right, here's some examples of 30 grams in meals for your visual pleasure. So here's this yogurt bowl, and so they have a cup of Greek yogurt here. And I want you to note that it's got the 2% fat here. Look, I personally think that 0% fat yogurt is like eating chalk. So don't feel bad about having some fat. Remember that the presence of fat helps us absorb a lot of nutrients that are in our food, and it keeps us satiated and keeps us full. It helps to get satisfied. So this has the yogurt, it has the almonds, and it has raspberries, and that looks like a pretty satisfying breakfast, and that will typically fill you up and keep you satiated until you need to have, some people might need a morning snack, but a lot of people, this will take them to lunch. And then you see this chicken with soba noodles and broccoli. That combination is nice. You know, you can do steak, like steak medallions or pork tenderloin, tacos. So tortillas are, you know, we're not trying to we're not throwing out the carbs, everybody. I'm not taking away the bread. We still want to have that sort of thing. And another breakfast one could be a breakfast burrito. And so you see that they're getting the protein from the egg and from the beans here. So you're kind of like cobbling that together so that maybe like you know, a lot of us don't want to have 4 eggs for breakfast. That might seem really rich and way too much. That could kind of be too much. So this is a way to do that, to get there. I will say that breakfast tends to be the hardest for most people, unless you're a lunch skipper and you're out there. I know you're out there, lunch skippers. So try not to skip lunch. Try to make sure that you can find time to get the protein in, even if you're putting together basically like a kid's bento box to give yourself all the food that you need, but make sure that you're not skipping. All right, so strength plateaus. I know we're not specifically talking about strength, and I brought in the strength exercise, and there are these recommendations that we need to be exercising as much as we can. So I do want to note this, that, some of us will reach, like, if you're somebody that works out a lot, you're probably going to reach a strength plateau at some point, and that can be really frustrating. And so what I want you to do with that, like maybe you're already doing the protein. So the first thing is, am I getting all the protein in that Jamie talked about? Because sometimes it can even be increasing that protein a little bit that can help you to keep getting stronger. And then the second thing is that, there's a couple other things that we can do. And one is that we always have to be kind of challenging our bodies. And so this is my mom, you guys. I'm so proud of her. So this woman has survived cancers multiple times, multiple different cancers. They're totally unrelated. She's just like, she's the survivor. And so she has started to do, like, in her recovery, has started to do a lot of strength training. And this just reminds us that, like, so a plateau can be overcoming a sickness. It can be getting back into life after something, a bout of depression. It can be lots of different things. And so, like, meeting and getting ready for, like, facing that challenge, when you're ready, you want to challenge your body. You want to make sure you're resting enough and getting sleep and the hydration, and then the food. And so the plateau really for me is a symbol of, like, it's lots of different things. It can feel like a full-time job to take care of your body and take care of your health. So meet yourself where you're at. What is the thing that you can change with the way that your diet is going day to day that can be that first little thing that kind of pushes you over to the next piece that you need to work on? But it definitely also, in reality too, we, to be able to grow muscle, we need to challenge our bodies, and we need to do strength. Now, not everybody can stand up and do a squat. So maybe somebody wrote in about neuropathy before the talk. And so there are really great and challenging exercises that you can do from a chair. There are really great and challenging exercises and personal trainers that focus on helping people reduce pain in their bodies and working through finding the right exercises for you and the combination of exercises for you that fit with your body and your body's ability. And so I think that that's an important thing to think about. If it's feeling rough because, say, you can't run because your knees hurt now, like that's a loss. That's really hard if you're a runner. And so what is something else? Like, where is a different way that you can move your body and find that joy? Because it's really, really important to this strength and longevity. And I know that's kind of stepping out of my lane as far as the nutrition is concerned, but honestly, nutrition touches every single piece of our lives. And so I just wanted to really bring this up because I think it's important and I get to show off my mom. All right, so here's a couple of whey protein powders that I went and looked at Consumer Labs. So if you don't know this, now you know that supplements are absolutely not regulated. The FDA basically, if they are going to regulate somebody that's in the supplement industry, they usually like slap them on the wrist and then they'll like rebrand and keep selling whatever they're selling. So I like to look for any kind of supplement I'm going to have needs to have the stamp of a third party trusted source. And for me, that's Consumer Labs. There's just, there are a couple of, don't just take it for granted if it says on the label, like tested by a third party. You want to see like a stamp that looks kind of official. And when I'm going to send Jenny, we're going to send out some follow-up stuff after, and I'll give you, there's two other ones that I can't remember right now, but I always use Consumer Labs. I really like their write-ups. And so this is a review from 2022. So the On Whey, the Gold Standard Whey, the NutriCost Whey, these both rated very high for having what they say they're going to have in them, and also for not being like crazy expensive. Okay, so that's sort of like, that's the sweet spot I want to find for y'all, is that you don't have to buy the most expensive product to get protein powder. So you can go this way. And then also these two, the organic whey protein and the from Garden of Life and Orgain, rated very high on a website called Real Food Dietitians. And these are guys that I respect and are a reputable source. So those are really good if you are cool with having flavors. Some people really want a flavorless option. And I know that a lot of people I talk to are depending on there's collagen. Anybody know what Costco is selling, the collagen that Costco is selling? Put in the chat if you know it. Anyway, there's some really good non-flavored options out there. There's a brand called Naked. There's a brand called Now. Those are different ones that you can use that don't have any flavor, and that can be really helpful. And then here are some vegan ones too. So all of these will go in the follow-up write-up. I'll include these options so you don't need to write them all down. But these are the vegan options that rated high for their quality of protein, not having things like heavy metals in them. Like, things can get pretty wacky out in the supplement world. So don't go too deep. All right. So can I get a time check, Jenny? I have no idea.
Time to start meeting. Right now it's 11:25 and we have till noon.
Okay. Cool. All right. So y'all, I got to talk about inflammation because we're all worried about it. We're all concerned about inflammation, and there's reasons why inflammation happens in our body. And there are things that we can do to help to mitigate that. So eating a lot more calories than you need in a day can increase inflammation, but like a lot more. I don't want you don't need to track exactly, like, I want you to try to, either if you don't know how much to be eating, then work with a dietitian. And if you do know, then, and you're able to kind of listen to your body and your hunger and fullness cues, if things aren't tasting as good because your taste has changed or because you don't have an appetite anymore, that's a really important time to meet with the dietitian and make sure that you have a plan so that you can know how much you should be eating each day, and you can get a really good sense of what you need to be putting in your body. But like a nutrient poor diet is going to increase inflammation in the body. High salt intake, excess refined carbohydrates, and lots of sugar doesn't mean you can't have a cookie. Like, we're not throwing it all away, but it shouldn't be, don't choose obviously to have like cookies over something else for lunch kind of thing. They should be sort of like, like they're like an accoutrement. They're just a little detail. Excess fat intake. So going really, really high on a lot of things like fried foods, and a lot of saturated fat, omega-6 fatty acids. So that's when you're eating like a lot of salad dressings that aren't based on things like olive oil, and you kind of throw off, you're not getting enough omega-3 fatty acids, but you're eating a lot of kind of more refined oils that aren't as nourishing. So sticking to things like olive oil, avocado oil, walnut oil, and then, there are some other kind of neutral oils that are not so bad, but I'm not really on the don't eat oil at all train. And I know there's some people that are really strong on that. I think that there's a lot of good evidence that these other oils are great for us. And then weight cycling really increases inflammation. It's really bad for you. So you don't want to be going up and down and up and down and up and down. And so it's better than to, what can I do that's going to kind of like either maintain where my weight is or just fluctuate a little bit. It's not good to go up and down. Nobody loses weight saying, I'm going to gain that back in a year. So it's just very hard to lose weight and keep it off. And so don't don't accept the shame that people try to put on folks for, not trying hard enough and whatever. Like, it's very hard and it's very complicated. Oh, I find whey protein mixes well with a Greek yogurt, and she mixes it with a fork. Thank you, Melissa. That's a great idea. I think that's really good. List of good oils. Yes, I can do that. I will send a list of good oils.
And someone above, I was going to interrupt, I didn't want to interrupt, said Garden Life makes an unflavored product.
Great. Yeah. So that's really good. So that's a good company to buy from. Suggested carbohydrate intake per day. So it definitely depends on your height, your weight, your age, and your activity level. But in general, it's like, let's go just to the plate method, which is really, really helpful. Is like, just imagine we've got the plate, a quarter of your plate is going to be protein. So that 4 ounces of protein is going to fit in a quarter of your plate. And then I want a quarter of your plate to be some sort of starch. So that can be starchy vegetable. It can be, pasta or other grains or rice. And then the last half should be all like less starchy vegetables. And that's kind of how, you want to think about it. But then you can also think about it in servings. So let's say you were going to have like eggs and toast for breakfast. It's fine to have a couple of pieces of toast. I wouldn't have 4 pieces of toast. And that's when I say the really sad thing, that a whole bagel it's really dense, and it's about 4 slices of bread worth of carbohydrate. So it might be better to, I don't know, eat half of it, eat half later in the afternoon for a snack or something like that. But the big thing is to balance the carbohydrates with protein and with vegetables and with fat, or fruit too. We haven't even talked about fruit, but fruit's great. So that's how it's, each meal should include some of each of those macronutrients, which is your protein, your fat, and your carbohydrate. And it should be somewhat balanced. Snacks, I kind of look at it the same way. It's just a smaller version. It's like a mini meal, So if I'm going to have like nuts and strawberries, then I've got strawberries are the carbohydrates, and the nuts have protein and fat in them. And so that can be a satiating snack. Here's some other things to think about when we're trying to reduce inflammation in the body. So the Mediterranean diet, which was mentioned yesterday, still like reigns as the best kind of, I wouldn't say diet. I'll say it's like it's an eating pattern. It's a way to eat that like you make up the majority of your foods with leaner proteins, with lots of whole foods, with fruits and vegetables, and you're depending on that. It also, a traditional Mediterranean diet does include some dairy, so some cheese, and yogurt and things like that. But it's like, you can just see like there's all the colors here, there's all the textures, you're getting a lot of different fibers. And so that's sort of you can always lean on that. You can always kind of, check yourself. How close am I kind of eating to Mediterranean foods? And if I'm not, what can I do to increase that amount? Let's see. So when you do that, when you're eating kind of lower on the food chain, or like lower on the processed food chain, we'll say that. So highly processed, highly palatable, very high sugar and very high salt foods are the ones that are going to kind of chip away a little bit at our health. I don't want to totally disparage processed foods, because they're helpful and they're really important. We can't all make everything from scratch. We can't all be like, making sourdough bread every day at home. And that could be because you simply are a very busy person with lots of things to do, and that's not the way you want to spend your time. It could be an ability situation. It could be a resource situation. So these foods have their place, but if you have the option to kind of come down a little bit in the like a little less processed foods, that's a good thing to do. It's something that you can work towards. But you don't have to shun all processed foods from your diet. But it helps all these things. It can help HDL and blood pressure and cognition, just eating these types of foods. Notice that I'm not like, if you lose weight, all of these things are going to improve, because we know that we see that in studies that, like when people lose weight, yes, we see blood pressure come down, we see things change, but they're also usually doing a lot of the things that we're talking about today. So we can't fully know which thing it is. And we also know that changing your diet and working out consistently is going to be the most impact for health in your body. Volumizing. So this is a concept that I want to talk about really briefly. So my idea for you is, let's say you want to have pasta for dinner, you're tired, you don't want to make anything more than that. Pasta for dinner is only really going to give you carbohydrates and a little bit of fat and a little bit of protein. If you can possibly take that pasta and make it sort of the quarter of your meal, put it in your bowl, and then add on something easy like either like a frozen chicken product, like sliced, or rotisserie chicken on top of it. And then also adding on some vegetables, you're increasing the volume and the nutrient density of that plate, but you're not throwing the pasta out, trying to encourage yourself. Maybe that the other easy thing you could do actually is also you could do like, you can do canned tuna or canned salmon. Those types of things are really easy. Always kind of trying to put a little bit of intention and effort towards getting vegetables in every meal and protein in every meal. If you're doing that, and you can, if you're not doing it, then, you can try it out as a game. It might not be the most fun game you've ever played, but it will help. If you're not eating any vegetables right now, don't wake up tomorrow and eat like 5 pounds of vegetables, because your stomach will hurt and your bowels will hurt and things will be a problem. Any of these changes, need to do them slowly and add them in over time. Let me see if I didn't already like stand on my soapbox of all of this for you guys. So kind of leading to the end here, we're trying to build health.
Sorry to interrupt, Jamie. Because someone just wrote, Beyond and Impossible Burgers have 20 grams of protein with a question mark.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to guess that the question mark is this a good choice? And it's an okay choice. So it's great that it has the protein, but they have a lot of fat and sodium. There's a lot of additives in them. They taste really good. So I would keep an eye on Beyond and Impossible and see. I think that they're going to read the feedback and continue to improve their products. But I think it's more of a sometimes food, and you can use them, but I wouldn't eat them like 4 times a week or anything like that. Thank you. It's a good question. So there are major risks with dieting. I've already alluded to that. It can really deplete your body composition, which what I mean by that is each time you go through a round of weight loss, you typically lose muscle mass along with fat mass. And then when you gain weight back, but you usually gain more fat back. And so you're slowly getting, your ratio is less and less lean and more fat. And so that's part of what plays into this risk of the yo-yo dieting. It's really hard, and you're not bad or wrong if that's what happened to you when you diet. That's how bodies work. And that's why I don't recommend dieting, because it doesn't really work very well. There are people that have been able to keep weight off, but it's a very small portion of people that have lost a lot of weight. Oh yeah, and it's exhausting. It's exhausting to think about food all the time. How can you get yourself into a pattern that feels sort of natural is really the holy grail of trying to, of like working on a pattern of eating. But dieting is it's a huge preoccupation with food. It takes up a lot of brain space. And I think you all have a lot more important things to be thinking about and talking about. All right, I'm not going to yell at you guys about that anymore. And so just to wrap up, evenly distribute your protein throughout the day. That gives your body 3 separate times to be able to kind of turn on the light switch of making more muscle. I'm going to pause and just look at this question. helpful or unnecessary, damaging, risky to take a daily general purpose. I think it's helpful. I'm not totally convinced that it always works to eat a multivitamin, but it's recommended, and I think there's not any evidence that it's hurting you, and it's definitely possible that it's helping you. So I say again, get one that's recommended. Like, you know, it's got a badge from Consumer Labs or one of those on there, so that you know that you're actually taking what you think you're taking, because there are a lot of things that will have like way too much iron in them, or, you know, and again, the heavy metals, you don't want that. But yeah, I think multivitamin is a good idea. So protein 3 times a day, 30 grams of protein. If you're a very short statured person, that might be too much for you. You might have to drop down to like 20 grams at each meal. I'm really happy to work through that with people if you need help figuring it out. And the other thing is, eat a variety of foods and don't skip your meals. Don't skip meals. Don't skip meals. So many of us do it. I'm so guilty of it. I eat lunch at like 2 o'clock every day. If I eat it, I'm really trying to work on that. That's like my big thing I'm working on. And moving your body. So resistance training, the recommendation is 2 to 3 times a week. That's what can really make a difference. And again, even if you have disabilities that you know, you're thinking, well, I can't do all of the things. There are things that you can do, and there are people that specialize in helping you do that. Actually, I know that, I don't know if I should like shout it out from the rooftops, but Josh, the trainer at the J, is amazing and works with people. And I think is a really incredible, he's really incredible at that. But there's a number of trainers that do that type of thing. I have other recommendations too, if you need them, and he's full because he is often full. Strength plateaus.
Really quickly, sorry, Jamie. Someone asked roughly how many minutes of resistance training in a session, and should seniors stick to light weights?
I'm not, you know what? I can't remember the minutes. And so I will include that in the write-up too. I'm going to pull from the government recommendations for that. I know it's like, I think it depends on what you're able to do. It's like the minutes for the resistance training, I want to say it's like 20 to 30, but that's really, I think I'm really out of my lane there. So I'm going to make sure that I get the right resource for that and include it in the write-up. And then sticking to light weights. No, you do not have to stick to light weights. What you should do is make sure that you're, you know, safety first, and that you're starting with weights that feel challenging, but not painful. And you certainly can work up to more. And just circling that back to bone health, that's one of the most important things for bone health, is to be doing resistance training. It helps to stress the bone in a good way, and it strengthens the muscles around your bones. So all in all, it helps with that. All right, that's what I got. Thank you guys. Thank you so much. I'm open to more questions and staying here. I'm also open to emails and texting if you want to text me. I really don't answer my phone. I have to be honest. So text or email me to start with, and then we can get a conversation rolling if you need me.
I don't think we missed anything in the chat, but if we did, for whoever did, feel free to ask your question, or you can just unmute yourself now. We still have about 15, 20 minutes if people want.
I've been sort of musing as we went along about the 30 grams per meal, when if you are serving a small portion of chicken or fish or a meat, you're almost there already. And often what I would put with that are, we do a DASH diet and have for years. So usually about 3 other vegetables with that meal. Now I'm over 30 grams for sure. So I think that the thing that was confounding in my thinking is, if you're going to have any kind of a meat-based protein, that already kicks the whole meal almost to 30, and then there's no room for a bunch of vegetables. You get where I'm going?
No, because it sounds like you're saying that you're already hitting that 30 grams with the small portion, and then you're,
Well, it said it was, with the 4 ounces, it was basically 20 to 28 grams,
4 ounces is 28. So
28. So, and if you're looking for a total of 30 for a meal,
Mhm.
that doesn't leave a lot of room for other things.
how does it not leave room for other things?
It's almost 30 grams.
Oh, but the other things, it's okay to go over that a little bit. And most of the other things that you're going to add are going to add more of the carbohydrates and fat and fiber and that sort of thing, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so it's not saying this is all that you're having, it's just like within a meal. And just go back to imagining that the plate that I was talking about is just
Sure.
like a quarter of that plate is going to be, and so what you
Okay.
described in that DASH diet is perfection.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then I'm good. I was stuck on, oh dear, I've already almost gotten all the grams of protein that you were talking about, but it's a matter now of looking at the balance on that plate with other things you're
Yeah, it sounds
doing.
like you're knocking it out of the park and you didn't even know it. So high five yourself.
Done.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions about, like, I don't know, meal plan ideas or anything about acquiring food, or I don't know. I feel like I've covered a lot, and we know we've done a lot of questions throughout. So if nobody has more questions, it's totally fine. No pressure. You guys can, take a stretch. Is this the end of the conference?
It is. And Cheryl, I think, can't raise her hand, but yes, this is, I mean, what a great way to end it. This has been fabulous, but I saw Cheryl raise her hand, so.
Okay.
I'd like,
yeah.
I'd like to put another plug in for that, the whole body reset. It really complements your presentation well. It encourages 30 grams of protein per meal, gives examples of resistance training and recipes. And I found it really was life-changing for me. And it's well researched and footnoted.
Yeah, that's excellent. Yeah, I think we very much align. I respect the AARP a lot. So I'll check it out and add it to my resources for people. So thanks for sharing that. And I think people should check it out. I forgot that totally reminds me. Somebody asked a really good question, like, how can I actually know and test at home if my strength is kind of up to par? And what I can tell you is that there is a test it's based off of a study called, the names of the researchers are Rincker Jones. I'm also going to include this in the write-up. But so what they did was they kind of honed in on ways to come up with standards of where people should kind of be in by age for strength. And the standards are like, they're being compared to a large number of people in their age group. So it's a pretty decent standard. But you can totally do it at home, because one of the things you can do is it's a bicep test. So you're doing bicep curls for X amount of time, and I'll write that into the test, but you can actually get a good sense of how many biceps can I do with, I think it's like, 5 pounds or 3 pounds of weights. And so then you can test that like every 6 weeks or 8 weeks. You could do that again and reassess yourself and see how you're doing. The actual test has like a number of different things. So it looks at gait speed and your leg strength and how fast it's kind of like endurance, how fast you can kind of get up and pivot and get back down. And so these are all sort of markers of independence and strength and balance and endurance. And so the full test, we do it at Vivo. Anybody that signs up for for Vivo, we do a baseline assessment, and then every 8 weeks we test people to see how they're doing more of. And so that is like, you can, I don't know if anybody else in the area offers that, but like Duke may, a geriatrician may know. But yeah, so anyway, there is a test that you can do at home for your arm strength, and I can send that.
Thank you. And I know Cheryl, you had unmuted.
You didn't mention almond milk. You had pea milk and various others. How does that stack up in your estimation for these things?
Just for protein, it's terrible. Like, it's like terrible. It's like, it's 2 grams usually for a cup of almond milk. So look at almond milk a little bit more as like, as a beverage and not like a protein source.
Mm, mm.
Yeah. So if you enjoy it and you love it, that's really great. I think that we're going to see more products come on the market that are like a combination of, say, like almond and pea and whatever. So oat milk also, somebody just asked about that. That oat milk is pretty low as well. So again, it's a decent beverage if you like it. There's no reason you don't have to have dairy. You know, plenty of people in the world are healthy and don't use dairy. But if you're looking specifically for protein, the soy and the pea protein are the ones that are going to give you the most per cup.
And then the other comment, if you have, is Instant Pot, and how does that impact all these choices?
Use it. I think it's such a great tool. You know, you can cook a lot of anything at once, but yeah, I think that it's really great. You can, you know, quickly do hard-boiled eggs. You can cook like even like a big roast in there. So it's a really kind of hands-off way to cook a lot of protein at once. I will say that the way that my mom kind of gets the protein is she'll do something like that where she'll cook a bunch in an Instapot or grill a bunch of meat, and then she'll separate it out into 4-ounce portions and freeze a bunch of them.
Okay.
So because she's a lunch skipper and she's in trouble all the time with me. And so she will just pull that out and she can quickly defrost that and put it on a salad or on a sandwich and whatever. And so that's a really nice, like, it's always good to have an emergency like meal on hand that you can make, you know.
And I'm sorry, one more question is, since you mentioned about cooking and freezing, if you've got chicken or fish in the freezer, then you defrost it and you cook it, is it going to do any damage to then freeze it and thaw it after that?
I don't know for sure. I know it's not really recommended for fish. But I think it loses, I don't know what it loses as far as a nutrient profile, but I think that it's just, I think there's concerns about safety with fish with refreezing.
Right.
Yeah, so I would look at USDA and see what the recommendations are around that. But you can definitely thaw out raw, you know, chicken, beef, and other meaty foods and then freeze them again after they're cooked.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for all of it. Wonderful.
And
Sure.
somebody asked, there are 2 questions that kind of maybe go together. I don't know. Someone asked about what about oat milk, and also, do you have to worry if you're trying to avoid estrogen and you don't want to have soy? Is the pea protein also worrisome with estrogen?
It's a better, the pea protein is probably the way to go as far as the milk is concerned. It's not with not knowing this person's particular situation. If you don't have like a medical reason to avoid the estrogens, then tofu is it's still a really great food. And even if you're a breast cancer survivor, the studies are really showing that it's healthy that is health promoting to include things like tempeh and tofu in your diet. But if that's not the case and you're avoiding it for other reasons, yeah, you can definitely go with the pea protein, and that's not going to give you the same problem. And then oat milk, great beverage, same thing, very low protein, great beverage, like 2 or 3 grams usually.
Any other questions at all? Well, if not, Jamie, this has been fantastic. Like I said, you always provide such great information, and you have such a great presenting style. You give us lots of information, and it's such a nice way to end this week of great talks. And so we thank you for being here with us, and we'll give you the Zoom clap, you know, the kind of, and
And
thank you so much.
thank you, Jenny. Thank you for you and your staff. You did a
Yes.
great job.
Well, thank you all for being here. We couldn't do it without you all being here. So thank you all for attending the different programs. I will wait for Jamie to send me the resources and the things that she said, and then I will send that out to you all. And just so you know, we really take this conference seriously. We want to make sure that we continue to do the things that are going well and improve on the things that maybe need some work. And so we will be sending out a feedback form about all the speakers and the conference itself, and at the beginning of next week. So if you want to take some notes today, just so you remember what you thought about today, and then when we send out the feedback form, we'll ask you to just email it back to us or just fill it out. Actually, you have to email back to us. Fill it out. I'll send it out either Monday or Tuesday. But if you have any questions in the meantime, I know Jamie said that you are welcome to email her and ask any questions, or also if you want contact information or things like that, you're welcome to email us as well. But thank you all for being here with us. And again, thank you, Jamie. And I hope you all have, I didn't know if there's anything to tell. Have a great day. So thanks. Bye, everyone.